We've been catching water for a couple weeks and got to double check that we're filling this up. That sounds good, but I want to see how far up it goes, because if this tank is full, that would be 5,000 gallons. Then I would have to open up this tank and that tank as well. Right now I have these two closed. I like to just have one tank open at a time, just in case anything happens down below. We have a water leak or something. We don't lose everything. We just lose one tank.
Oops.
I can hear that there's still empty space in there. Get this debris off of here. Yeah, it's pretty full. It's right there. Yeah. We're getting pretty close to filling this tank up. Just in the first, couple weeks of the stronger rain. So that's good. Our entire usage throughout the dry season was about 15,000 gallons, and that's from April to October. We didn't have single rain since April, basically. Yeah. And then up until like mid-October, and we started getting some rain. And we have 20,000 gallons of water storage total capacity. That's where we started in April, and then we went down to about 5,000 gallons. And we used up those two tanks. We used up pretty much all this tank as well for the most part, and then we have two more tanks that are 2,500 gallons, makes up the rest of the 2,000 gallons. And we can pump the water from those 2,500 gallon tanks up into these tanks. So I think we did have a little bit more than 5,000 left, but normally when you look at water usage, maybe you want to look at your own water usage, see how much you use. For two people, it's pretty common to use like 2,500 gallons per month for two people without a garden. From April to October, that's 6 months. Yeah, we use 15,000 gallons in 6 months.
Yeah, and we were here the whole summer pretty much. Mm-hmm. Usually we go on trips, but yeah, this summer we mostly stayed here. And
we had a lot of friends and family come visit as well.
Ruska really loves running around up here, so since we're up here, figured we might as well let him burn some energy.
Yeah.
Our garden is a pretty decent size. It's not massive. I know when people think of buying land, they're imagining having an entire farm. Our home is built on the middle of a hill, so the usable land, not that much. So what you see right behind me and just a little bit in front, that's all the space that we have for the garden. And honestly, it is plenty of space. We do think the garden probably uses up most of our water. We're pretty careful about how much water we spend. We take really short showers, and especially because we lived in the van, we are really good at conserving water. We shower at our house the same way we showered in the van. So, soap up and then turn the water off and rinse and turn it off and then do whatever other soaping that needs to be done. And the garden this summer did really great. If you see any of our previous videos, then we had very bountiful harvests. On Instagram, I'm always posting about, our daily harvest. And this summer, I would say we didn't buy any vegetables at the grocery store. I think the only thing I sometimes bought was cilantro, because cilantro doesn't grow well here in the summer. It tends to just bolt. Yeah, so our grocery bill was super low this summer, and that was really great. For two people with a decent sized garden and friends over almost every single week, I would say we did pretty great with the rainwater. Let me show you guys how we get our water off the grid here in California. So right now our water collection is only on this side of the roof. It goes down to here, all the way down to over there. And then all that rooftop water comes down this pipe right here and into this container. Oh my gosh. Oh, the little horse. Roscoe wants to be participating in this video. There's a sensor in here that once it gets high enough, it will pump the water all the way to our storage tanks, which are way up there because it's gravity fed down to us. While we did make it the whole summer without needing to truck in water, we do really want to add at least one more tank. I think that would give us a lot of peace of mind because we just barely made it. And if we want to expand the garden and maybe add a hot tub, then we're going to need just a little more water. Also this year, I feel like the rain came kind of early, and according to everyone, this was a very cold summer. I thought it was perfect, but apparently it will get a lot hotter. So it's possible that next year will be a lot hotter, a lot drier for a lot longer. So I'd like to be prepared for that. We are not currently collecting anything from this side, which is something we would like to change because that is a lot of surface that we could be collecting water from, and the faster we collect, the better. We do also collect some water from this greenhouse, and we need to set up to collect water from this greenhouse rooftop as well. So we still need to fill up this guy, and I was thinking about getting a second one to add here, but these 50-gallon tanks honestly fill up so fast, like one rain and it's full. So I was thinking maybe I should consider buying maybe like a 500-gallon tank because those are big, but they're not so big. And I think they would fit in this space pretty well, and that would be a lot more useful than 50 gallons. Though we have two of them, so technically we have 100 gallons for the garden, but still, I think a 500-gallon tank would go so much further. Like I said earlier, this year we did have some early rain. However, we couldn't really fill up with that water because you can't fill your tanks with the first rain. You need a really good heavy fall for your first rain to really clean up the roof. So we didn't collect anything from the first rain, and even the second rain we didn't collect it because it was so spaced out and it honestly wasn't that heavy of a rain. So we didn't want to be collecting dirty water into our storage tanks, especially because we technically don't have a filtration system that we're aware of. I think in the inspection report when we purchased the house, the inspector did say he thought maybe there was a filtration system, but he could not find it. And we've never been able to find it, so I don't think there is one. We do have a filtration system for our drinking water, and we recently added a filtration for the shower head because we kind of both noticed that we were both losing a lot of hair. So since we put that in, I feel like my skin is not as dry and our hair is not falling out as much. Buying a filtration system is definitely at the top of our list. However, it is like $2,000, I think, to get one for the entire house. We haven't quite looked into this, but we know for our under the sink filter system, it does use up some water to filter the water. So there's a chance that using that filtration system might make us run out of water a little faster. We do know that some of our neighbors don't have a filtration system because they figure it's rainwater, it's pretty clean. So it's possible we don't need it. I think one thing we should probably buy though is, I think it's a UV light for the tanks. While we don't collect the water for drinking on that first or second rain, I just put a trash can down here and catch that rain. So those first few sporadic rainfalls did not go to waste. I still collected a little bit of water. But yeah, as you can see here, there is a pipe. So I just feel like we could be collecting the water from the other side of the house and maybe put some kind of collection system here. Not really sure because we still want to build that sunroom here, and then this space might be a little tight once we get to building this. So same thing here, we collected the rainwater from the first few cycles. So that at least helped. I think it was like end of September, October that we had a couple sporadic rainfalls, so it was still warm. I think this helped tide us over until now because we didn't have to use any water on the garden. And I think I put out 2 trash cans to collect all that rain. So we had a good amount of water that I was able to use to water the garden. So over there is our other tanks. And because this is so close to the tiny house, which is right over there, for a while we actually thought that this tank was for the tiny house and that maybe they were separated. And we kind of thought that was a good thing because if that was the case, then once we ran out of water here, we would know when to stop having guests over. And it actually took a really long time to figure out our water system because we had no idea where the pipes were. The previous owner very much did like a DIY system. So it was kind of hard to figure out. And we ended up hiring someone who was more knowledgeable about this stuff. And even he had a hard time. So they did some things that were probably made sense to them at the time, but to the guy who does this professionally was a little confused on some stuff. So it took a long time to really figure everything out. And one of those things that took us forever to figure out and to also fix was the seasonal creek pump. So in the rainy season, we end up with a really nice creek down at the campsite, and there was a pump down there and a whole system that we couldn't figure out. And then we realized things were kind of broken, had to fix it, had to figure out how the whole system worked. Eventually, after several days and the help of several different people, we figured it out and we now have water going up there. But the biggest issue for that seasonal creek is that the pump is just so weak, and they also put a very small pipe. So it takes forever to get any water from that creek into our tanks. And Taki wanted to get a gas-powered pump, but we realized the gas-powered ones are not allowed to be sold in California. And then we have our horizontal well over here. Occasionally you can hear a little drip drop, but until we get a bunch of rain, this won't really fill all that much. I think this summer it maybe filled up twice. If you're new here, you're probably wondering, why don't we dig a vertical well instead of this horizontal well? Well, if you've been here for a while, then you already know the answer to this one. We have tried digging 2 wells. Both came out dry. A lot of people in the neighborhood, which everyone here has a lot of land, so there's a lot of space between us and, the neighborhood. A lot of people have pretty decent to really good wells. And we know from pulling the info that none of our direct neighbors have good wells. We knew this before we went through with the sale. However, we also knew no one had hired a geologist and just picked a spot to try that seemed good. So we were hoping maybe they just chose poorly. And that guy we hired to do a couple test sites told us that one site had really good potential. And he said the accuracy of these tests are about 80%. That's a pretty high chance. And our reasoning, it's 80% accurate on the amount of water. There was never a question of if there was water, but how much water. So we went through with the sale, and unfortunately there was nothing. And the geologist told us that he had never had a situation like ours happen. And usually if the testing says there's water, there's water. It's just a question of how accurate is the amount. Another thing we have since learned, for most people who own properties similar to ours, aka on the hillside, mountainside, whatever you want to call it, the water is really good on the ridge, so at the top of your property. And most homes with these good wells on top of the ridge line, they're pretty lucky to have the road going to that spot. So their house starts at the top and then their property goes downward. Ours is built in the middle, so the top isn't accessible for the drillers. It's just way too steep. It's really expensive to dig wells. It was about 10 grand each, which we already knew when we were going to buy the house that it was going to be expensive, and we put that money aside to try. Unfortunately, we really thought we'd get it in the first try, and we were kind of crossing our fingers for that second try, but neither of them worked out, and it's just too much money to try a third time. And yeah, 30 grand, that's a lot of money. So yeah, at this time, we're not going to try again. Maybe in the future, we could somehow make this road better. There's a potential that we would maybe try again in a few years. But right now the road is really, really steep. This part they said is doable, but it's like once you get to that second curve that you kind of saw in the beginning of this video, it starts getting really, really steep, and the truck with the drill just can't make it up there. So right now we're just going to have to make do with the water situation that we currently have. And then we have this tank behind the garage next to the laundry room. We thought for the longest time that maybe it used to just collect rainwater and it was a separate tank for the garden, because it does connect to a couple spouts back there. And we just kind of thought like maybe they just took out the tube that brings the water down and we just need to re-add that. But one time we realized the water was coming out. It was overflowing after we had already emptied it and cleaned it. And we were just like, well, how did it fill up? And we realized they have a gray water system in place. We're still not 100% sure which plumbing connects to it, but so far we're pretty certain it is the laundry machine, the dishwasher, basically the whole kitchen. But I don't think that the tiny house slash guest house is connected to it in any way. Next year I'm planning to rethink the garden and making sure that all my flowers are not in the same planter bed as the edible food. I did read that technically you can use gray water for any vegetables as long as they are not root vegetables. Maybe I'll start taking care of the roses. There's a bunch of roses that came with the house that I just didn't water all summer long because I didn't want to waste the water on them. But now that I know about the gray water, that's what I'll be using for any kind of flowers. And possibly the fruit trees. I think the fruit trees should be fine with the gray water. I mean, the fruit trees survived nobody living here for a few years, so they didn't even get watered. The original owner definitely really thought through the lack of water here. So we have the gray water, we have the horizontal well, we have the rainwater catchment system, and the tiny house also has a lot of water that it can collect on the roof. So all of the roof water goes down to this pipe right here, goes all the way across that, and then it goes down this pipe, which disappears into the ground. That little white tube that you see sticking out right there, that's the water that's coming out of there. I think we could potentially flatten out this space and maybe try to catch the water here. There is space to catch the water in this area. One of Taku's ideas that he really wants to do is he wants to turn the guest house area into kind of like a Japanese Zen garden. So having a huge tank there might ruin the Zen vibe. And over here is where the roses are. You can see they're surviving. Not really thriving though. We didn't really have too many roses actually grow, but the plants have survived. So I think with a little care, they'll be okay. Or we could just replace them and grow vegetables. There's also another system that we looked into, which was fog catchment. And this has been sent to us so many times too. But we've ultimately kind of decided that while it is the most affordable kind of water source to install in our homestead, it's not really all that helpful, I guess. Yes, we do have a lot of fog, but only in the winter when it's raining. So it just wouldn't really do a whole lot to help us, because if it's already raining, then why catch the fog? They're kind of big and a little bit of an eyesore. It's probably something that we'll eventually experiment with just for the sake of curiosity and wanting to know how much we could actually collect with fog. I mean, I guess if we ever have a drought, there's probably still fog, so that would be helpful during, you know, a drought season. But yeah, it's just not that useful, I guess, especially in the summer. The summer is so dry. I don't think we saw any fog for the vast majority of summer. We've also looked into systems that pull water out of the atmosphere. Those are really expensive though, the machines for that. And based off of the reviews for people with similar climates to ours, it's just not really worth it. You need to have a lot more humidity in the air to make how much you pay for that system worth it. And it would honestly just be cheaper to truck in water, which is another option for us. You know, even if we run into a couple months where we run out of water, we can still truck in water. It's a little pricey, but it's definitely doable if we're only doing like a couple months here and there. At least this year, the water situation wasn't that bad. We got through the whole year, but we'll see for the years to come. You never know when a drought will happen. And another way we try to save on water is we have this garden wash station. So I would wash all my veggies in here and the water comes out into this bucket, and then I can just water the garden. You would be surprised how much water you go through washing your fruits and vegetables, especially like root vegetables. Those are really dirty. And things like cabbage, because they have all these layers that dirt get into, and also bugs. For the garden, it's all organic. And to be honest, in the summer, I don't really use anything except the help of the lizards. We have a ton of lizards in the garden. Everything we use is organic, but I do use some stuff in the winter time because there are so many slugs here and other bugs that like to eat the leafy greens. And this bucket under the sink method is actually the same thing we're going to do for the ceramics room, because you do use a good amount of water doing pottery. And then I can use all that water also for the garden. And I don't really want little clay bits getting into our sewer system. I think right now in the current ceramics room, that one is connected to that gray water tank, so I don't want there to be a buildup of clay in there. I also just don't want that to get into our septic system. I'm not sure what will happen if it gets in there. Septic systems seem pretty fragile. You're not supposed to flush anything other than toilet paper into there, so rather not have any issues with the septic system. We do use drip irrigation for the garden, so we're using as little as possible for our garden, and I also put a bunch of wood chips down to kind of keep the water from evaporating too quickly. Which always brings up the question, aren't those wood chips going to take away all of the nitrogen in your soil? And the answer to that is no. The study that I saw that said that specifically says the wood chips mixed into the soil. So we're not mixing our wood chips into the soil, we're just putting it on top. And also, once those wood chips do break down, if you do mix it in, it's going to be good for your soil. So long term better, short term maybe not. But for us, we have to make the decision of, would we rather lose a little bit of nitrogen off the top of our soil, or would we rather lose a bunch of water? So it's a pretty easy choice for us, especially because I can always add nitrogen back into the soil using some kind of amendments or fertilizers, you know, all that good stuff. Wood chips, drip irrigation, and doing the watering in the morning or the evening has been the best for the garden. I think maybe next year, maybe we can put some kind of meter to see how much water we use for the garden, how much water gets used in the guest house versus our house, the main house where we live. I think it'd be kind of interesting to see, because I kind of have a theory that the guest house probably uses the most water. Everyone who visits us knows our water situation, but you know, some people take a long shower, like an hour long shower. So for them, a short shower is 30-40 minutes. For us, a short shower is like 5 minutes or less. And then also when people visit, they're only here for a couple days, which means we have to wash the sheets each time. So I'm sure that uses up a lot of water too. Actually, my family is really concerned about our water situation, so they all bring their own blankets and towels. But we don't have any expectation that people do that. Yeah, I would be curious to see what uses up the most water. One of the reasons that Taku chose the boat launch that he takes his boat to is they have water to hose down the boat and clean all his equipment, so he doesn't have to be using the water at our house. Taku has also made friends in the neighborhood who have really good wells, and they have told him that if he ever needs a refill on water, if we run out of rainwater, then he can always come by and fill up. We would need to actually get some kind of tank for that though. But yeah, that's how we survive off of rainwater here in California. And that's going to be everything for this video. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys on the next one.